The other
True.
thing is definitely to always have like 2 live mics, because like 20% of the time one of the mics is going to fuck up somehow.
So we should record on an iPhone.
I've done this.
This is amazing. This is secretly why we're my first interview.
That's fine with me.
We technically first met at VidCon. Do you remember that?
I do.
When you were like acting security for Colin and Smear.
Exactly.
Fending off like everyone. You
physical manager.
I think you like swatted me away.
You were
And I
among
was
many
like,
people that got swatted, so don't take it personally.
They were celebrities. But I think it's like a funny statement on like where we are in the quote unquote creator economy, the fact that like they are celebrities effectively.
Yes. Well, the line we like to use is that they influence the influencers.
Yes.
And so at VidCon, where you're surrounded by people that have millions of followers, even though Colin and Smear is still below 1 million and about to crack it, they are the most popular people there.
Well, they've made, I mean, I guess that makes sense though, because they've made their living profiling creators.
That's their audience.
And their
That's
journey.
who we want to be speaking to, and so far we've done a great job reaching them.
Yeah. For those who don't know who Colin and Smear are, do you want to just give a 2-second overview?
2-second overview. Colin and Smear are your favorite creator's creator. They host a YouTube show. They put out a newsletter 3 times a week about the creator economy from their perspective. So it's not about the macroeconomic trends. It's really profiling the people that are making moves in this space that we're talking about today.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought a fun place to start. So when you and I first met, you said something that really stuck with me. I actually mentioned it to Sam, which is that creators have the opportunity to be kind of the digital version of trade associations. And I love that. I think it's like a really interesting way to illuminate like where we are in this moment in time. But do you want to just elaborate on kind of what you meant by that?
Definitely. And by and large, in a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, nothing is that new. There's always an updated version of what has already happened, and history provides a really great base to look at business models and where things are going and how levers are changing. And when I think about industries and how people belong to a profession, most people work in the same profession for 10 to 20, 30 plus years, they belong to something. Mm-hmm. And creators are so great at building community and capturing attention and interviewing and telling stories and building trust. And those are so many things that are similar to a trade association. So in particular professional verticals, I think that creators have an awesome opportunity to compete with the same products and value props that a trade association offers. So job boards, events for people to network and get to know each other, ways to advertise and meet people, just ways to get information and to know what's really going on. And so especially for the Colin and Smear example, focusing on the creator industry, we're very excited to start filling out that ecosystem and effectively being a trade association, even though we'll never put that on marketing material because it's not that sexy of a term to use.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and this is like not a new concept, but just how the internet has created niches. Like niches are no longer niche on the internet. So I used to work at Walmart, and I sat in their like retail tech incubator. And one of the most interesting things being inside of one of the biggest retailers in the world is that you saw like the different categories of products that were moved. And so they had this taxonomy, which is that it's like L1, L2, L3. So like, for example, take everyday living as L1, and then L2 would be baby products. And then L3 is like baby safety. And then L4 is strollers, right? And like you could build an entire career around strollers as a creator or an influencer, becoming like the person who just knows strollers inside and out. And so, and what's interesting is now I'm marrying kind of the insight of like, okay, how many dollars in GMV were moved in the stroller category in a given year? And like, how big is that opportunity for a creator just who owns that space?
I think that the Walmart perspective is really interesting at scale because you get all the different SKUs and all the different L's. And if you're a creator that hasn't built a product yet, you still have this front row seat to your audience to just ask and say, what do you want? What do you like? Which stroller do you like more? Let's go review the top 10. Let's do it together. And that flywheel of product development, I think, is what we're still in the early days of relative to a Walmart working with a Unilever to guess what scent shampoo might be best. That's an expensive process. There's so much that goes into that. But I think there's this whole new era of product development that comes from building with your community.
Totally. So we should also just level set. You run Smooth Ops.
Yes.
I'll, before we get too far in the interview, give you the opportunity to describe what it is, how you came to found it, and what the mission is.
So we've actually just changed the name to Smooth Media instead of Smooth
Good
Ops.
to know.
It is very new because through the storytelling of how I came to be the CEO and co-founder of Smooth Media, it'll make a little bit of sense. So my co-founders and I worked at Morning Brew together, and we were very fresh out of college, our first true media experiences, specializing in newsletters and then podcasts in the business media world. I was doing new product development. My COO and co-founder Jenny was doing marketing, and she was the head of growth through the exit. Kinsey was the second writer and first podcast host. And so we all had different angles of growing Morning Brew from a 6-7 person team to a 75 person company and a large exit to Business Insider. And after that, middle of the pandemic, we're seeing the creator economy buzz, all these channels blowing up on TikTok and YouTube. We got to get in there. Like, what's next for us? How can we go have fun in that space? And as I got to know other creators, they were really tired. They were thinking very short term, which compared to tech companies that are thinking in decades, they're thinking in the next 3 episodes, how am I going to go viral next month? And that was limiting their potential from a business standpoint. So I was starting to look at it, thinking about how do you build teams, how do you match business models? And that's where Smooth Ops was really born, to say, hey, can we help you run your business? Can we help you match it to the right business model, scale appropriately? You fast forward a year later, we're now a year of existing. We launched last August of 2021. We're still in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still there.
Yeah.
Now we look at it and we say, actually, we are a platform for media businesses. And so it's very similar services, but working with creators that have the potential to create these trade associations, to create media companies, we can provide that beginning services, that strategy, really bring a team from day one to convert your personal channel into a media brand. And so that collection of media brands that's in our portfolio, as we start to own pieces of those companies and have deeper relationships, is supported by the Smooth Media platform.
And so where does Smooth Media start and end in terms of the bounds of what you would do or not do?
There are 4 core services that we focus on. It's operations, so just day-to-day general management, which includes strategy, what's the product roadmap, what are the next best moves. The second is editorial, so it's really helping hire writers and editors and video producers to say, it's hard to train them, it's hard to do that in mass. So we have people on our team that do that. HR, hiring is really time consuming like any other startup, so helping build teams, manage those teams. And then the 4th is sales. Not every media company needs their own sales department, but managing relationships, owning those relationships is really important for a media company to flourish. So those are the things that we specialize in, where the creator is really making sure the audience is cared for, that it's genuine, that it's top-notch quality, the storytelling, the subject matter expertise. That's really what they're thinking about. But as things go on, those relationships change, just as any other startup incubator might change as their startup grows.
Yeah. So I want to steer the conversation into something that you and I talked about when we first met, which is what the right org structure for a creator looks like. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit about what's the right profile of a creator that you would like to partner with, and then put differently, who's not someone that you would be a good target to partner with?
The really large creators on TikTok and Twitch that are live streaming and dancing and funny and good looking, I don't know what the hell to do with them. Comedians don't know I don't know what to do. It's a really more entertainment leaning type of talent that is part of a much larger world of talent management and big brand deals that candidly is not our specialty. We really like the idea of like publishing news and journalism and analysis, and we lean a bit nerdier into the things that we like. We're a bit more utility focused, so we're looking at a parenting partnership right now. We're back to the strollers. They're all about parenting content, pregnancy, raising kids, health, and that's really helpful. And you still do it in a fun way, but that utility is the area that we feel most comfortable with. And then we also like to partner with creators that have already found content market fit, which is a term that Colin and Smear have done a really good job of popularizing, which is the creator likes making it. They're not going to get bored of it. They found a great format. The audience likes it, which you can tell in the comments, you can tell in the replies that there's a real fit and it's a consistent fit. And that the algorithm likes it, which means that you're formatting in a way that it can go viral, that it can be searched on YouTube and get picked up in the algorithm. And those qualities are really important for growth when it comes back to the org structure question. But to answer the which types of creators we like, it's
Yeah.
very niche, a little bit more utility focused, have already found their fit, and are candidly just like the best in class. We want to work with the best.
But and so because this is just talking about launching a media business, and
Correct.
so if let's say a creator comes to you, they hit all of those criteria that you described, and they want to launch a media business, but they also want to launch a product business. They want to launch a subscription service, something ancillary. Would that be a good fit, or is it someone who's simply just focused on media?
We believe that media and ad-based media is great because it allows the incentives between the business and the content to be the same, which is audience growth. And in your beginning phases of launching this business, growing your audience is really a top priority. Once you start selling a subscription to your audience, once you start selling a t-shirt, that starts to make you look down funnel instead of growing the funnel. And so for that first 2 to 3 years, let's go big. Let's get this thing to 1 million. And then let's think about products and whether we're the ones that operate those products that we sell to the audience, or whether we bring in a vendor or a friend company that's really good at building courses. We'll figure that out the best way. But at the end of the day, like, we want to be at that strategy level, connecting the right components to it, whether it's hiring people or bringing in vendors.
How do you, and maybe this dovetails nicely into the org conversation, but when you're helping these creators launch their media businesses effectively, how do you think about helping them keep their voice, right? Like the biggest question with creators is, how do you scale you? And so what's your advice to people that you partner with, or how do you do that effectively?
Invest in team. Training is a concept that I think is very new to a lot of the people that we've worked with, because they've been so isolated for such a long time, making videos on their own, managing it on their own, and some of them have a co-host or a partner that makes it better, but there is something about being in front of the camera that makes you feel inherently irreplaceable. And you are irreplaceable. But finding a writer and bringing them into your thought process and editing with them, or saying, hey, why don't you take a stab at the script for the next video and then we'll teach you. That concept of training within like the creator economy is still rather new, because there haven't been that many people, there haven't been that many teams to learn from, or they don't have experience from working with another creator. Most people have never worked for a creator before. So that idea of like investment of time and blocking off parts of your schedule and saying, let's just talk. Why don't you ask me questions? Why don't we hear about it? Why don't we write on a board what our core values are? And so those exercises are not overly complex, but it's a time investment that pays off when you can have a team that supports you and comes back with ideas and says, hey, I know what the next episode should be, or I know what question you should ask, because we've been talking for 6 months now.
Right.
And that moment is like an aha moment to say, oh shit, they can actually help produce me.
Yeah, you guys did this really effortlessly, or did it really well at Morning Brew, I think, where you were able to maintain such a consistent voice, yet scale to, I mean, I don't know how many people are at the business when you guys exited, but... When
the company got sold and then I left shortly after, there were about 75, but I was doing a lot of the writer recruiting in the beginning days, and I would go through hundreds of writer applications. And Neil, who's still there as the managing editor, would say no to 99% of the people that I thought were good enough. And he then figured out how to train me again to look for certain characteristics, but he'd go, we're hiring comedians, not writers. And I was like, oh, okay, great. You now know what to tell people, they should show up and get back to you. And so that Morning Brew voice was like, there's different types of comedy, but if you're not treating writing like a comedic sport, you're not going to fit in at Morning Brew. And so that, we had to learn, and it took so many interviews of saying, no, we're not a coffee company, we're a newsletter company.
No, we're not a coffee company.
You get on the phone and you'd say, no, we don't sell coffee. We are media. We are writers. And that did take a long time to figure out how to train the voice, but we would also write a newsletter internally for 3 months before sending it out. And so you have, you look at the first one, you look at 6 weeks in, you're like, yep, that just wasn't good enough. And then you get 2-3 months later, and you're like, okay, now you've trained. And I think most other media companies would say, hey, you've been hired, start publishing. And that idea of training, again, is something we've been prioritizing for a very long time now.
So on the org discussion, I think when creators first started to become a thing, you saw people look at them and say, okay, this kind of fits within the Hollywood archetype. And then managers came about, UTA, WME, CAA started launching their digital talent teams. People are trying to not retrofit creators into this model, but treat them kind of like entertainment and talent. I think there's totally a time and a place for it. And I know that you and I talked about this, but as you think about a creator trying to build a serious business, be it a media business, a product business, any other business kind of around in and around themselves, how do you think the org structure changes, and what teams and expertises need to be in place to make them successful?
It's a good question. I think the retrofitting has been very evident, and managers come in and say, I'm going to take 15% of everything.
I'm trying to be friendly to our manager friends.
But
yeah,
certain managers, and I've fallen into this category, and people sometimes think we are management, and sometimes the contracts look like management, where 15% of everything is a really weird thing to juxtapose against joining an early stage company and saying, I'm going to have 15% of revenue.
Right.
That just that wouldn't resonate. If you were walking to a tech company or a new CPG product and you say, hey, I'm going to be the general manager, and for forever I'm going to take 15% of the top line.
Right.
You're like, what the hell? Like, who would ever agree to that? Like, nobody would ever do that in a million years. If you're a specialty baker that wants to get their product in grocery stores, you'd be like, I'm not giving you 15% forever. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So I think like looking at it as a business and saying, hey, you can be a co-founder, you can be a partner, you can have equity that vests, you can have certain bonuses that are on top of your salary. And so a lot of these creator businesses, when they start so small, can't justify hiring a fancy CEO that might take crazy six-figure numbers to retain. But that's where you say, hey, let's talk about equity of the business today. We are launching a courses business. So for the courses business, let's be co-founders. But that doesn't mean you get my AdSense.
Right.
And so there's certain nuances, I think, when you make it objective, help a lot relative to saying, like I as a person make all this money and people take cuts from me.
Right.
That language to me feels like a lose-lose situation relative to let's be mature business people and talk about the business equity we're creating.
Yeah. And, I think your role is super interesting because, you mentioned you help strategize and allocate time and help make trade-offs and decisions and whatnot. That to me feels like a GM or a COO or almost like a president role. Whereas you have the creator, like being the real growth and marketing and go-to-market and distribution engine. So how do you think, like if we were to like tick through, right, like the P&L of a business and kind of like which headcount sits where, like how do you compare that to a creator business to like a regular C Corp? Like what happens to marketing? Like what happens to sales, right?
And right now so to your point, so the product is content. So that editorial team is the core product. So that's the most expensive part. It should be very expensive to build a good product. There's a reason why really talented people get paid well. And so that, whether it's a studio, whether it's equipment, whether it's production hands, like that is a big investment that should be consistently updated and people should be managed well. On the marketing side, to your point, the best content grows organically right now. And it's organic is a funny word, but what TikTok has done with their feed and what YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels has now become, these viral feeds act very differently than the social graph and the way things can grow. And you look at the number of TikTok profiles with over 1 million relative to YouTube and other places and how much faster those profiles have grown. That is marketing. That is the growth department. So having somebody that focuses on those formats is much better than hiring a CMO to run paid ads and brand campaigns and billboards and all these other funnels and things like that, because the tech companies have done it. Like that's it. You don't need to go rebuild that. If you can have native content that engages people, that builds that trust, that builds that loyalty, you don't need a CMO. So we don't have any marketing hires. We don't have any demand gen specialists.
Sure.
I don't think that exists as a media company or a creator media company. Sales is still very important. A lot of great sales now comes inbound. You say, hey, you know how to find on my link tree or at the bottom of a newsletter, come advertise with me. And so I think that there are things changing in the sales world that is changing brand partnerships, and a lot of brands are getting savvier about how they use the influence of a creator plus their distribution plus their ability to produce really cool stories. And that I think there's still a lot of movement. But at the end of the day, you need to incentivize a salesperson, mostly on commission, because that's what the rest of media sales still is. And so sales is a very important part of that business. So it's like sales, that operations that we talked about, that content, those are usually the 3 pillars in the organizations that we're building.
How much are you focused on sales and like brand deals and partnerships versus just organic content generation? Like when you sit down with a creator, how much of the discussion or the strategy planning is dedicated to those two buckets?
Almost equal. And mostly
Interesting.
because our responsibility as the business heads or like the business minds need to make sure that the money is coming through the business. And so we need to make sure that the creator approves of the brands that we're working with, that they can actually deliver the things that I might be pitching or that my team might be pitching. Designing, hey, like, what do we think we're going to do in Q4? Are we going to publish 5 videos or 12 videos? And so that does take a lot of discussion in a good way, because everyone should remember how they make money, and it's healthier to have a lower wall between editorial and sales. And once things get going, like I have less and less of an impact on the editorial. I'm not talking about guests to come on. I'm not getting my hands in which episode comes out next. We want to make sure that the whole business works. And so that both take a lot of time. We do a lot. We're working hard.
Yeah. So when would it ever make sense for a creator to bring your function in-house? And what happens in that state? I mean, obviously it's a great problem to have. It means they're wildly successful, but what would that look like?
When I don't know. I don't know the answer actually right now. I think that my idea is that like we are integrated, we're partners, that we can train GMs and place them in each of the portfolio businesses the same way a private equity company would consistently have relationships with their portfolio.
So you would have the model where you would have a GM solely dedicated to Colin and Smear.
Definitely. And at a certain point, that company will be making enough money to really warrant a talented GM. We're still in that upcoming phase where there wouldn't be enough work for a fancy CEO. But there will be, and our hope is that we can place a trained person who really gets it and really understands the whole model.
Yeah, this is where I think the creator selection becomes hyper important, or else you may, like, if you play this forward, right? Let's say Colin and Smear, or name your other favorite creator.
Coincider that we're working with? Yeah, Coincider. We're working with Trapital with Dan Runcie.
Sure. Yeah. So let's say Dan wants to launch a music marketplace, right? Something that's like somewhat outside of his traditional media stuff. Mm-hmm. So does his GM become the GM of the media business? Like, how do you, put differently, how would Smooth coincide or coexist with Dan's business more broadly? Should there be other ancillary efforts or ventures?
Yeah. So one is he could start a separate business, and that wouldn't have anything to do with us. Maybe it licenses the Trapital name because he's the primary owner of Trapital. Yeah. But we technically don't need to be involved in every business venture that the creator does. They are also business people. I might have other investments or other activities, and there's no exclusivity within that. I think part of the relationship building is saying we like working together enough and we're savvy enough to hire, to find the right people, that it's otherwise impossible. That it's so hard to find great business partners that our offers to each other are always the best ones and the quickest and the way we can keep making progress. And we'll see how that plays out. I think that we'll see like a number of situations where people will branch out into other businesses that are completely different.
Yeah.
But if it was a music marketplace and that was really a great business for Trapital to go into, that would be interesting. I don't know. I would have to see, like, do we feel like we have the competency to do a great job? And if not, then he should choose what's best for his business, which is totally fine because we've got our hands full with other things.
Yeah. One of the gaps I see is that, to your point around like content market fit, right? I think there's a lot of creators that have, they've clearly tapped into something that is working for them in their specific niche or sector or whatever. And they have all these ideas, but they don't really have like a business focused person to go run user diligence, commercial diligence. Like, is this a viable idea? And it's like going from point A to point B of like, okay, if you're Dan, you have this great idea of like launching a music marketplace, but like, is that really a good business to get into? What are the barriers to entry? What's the economic model? How do you actually go to market with something like that? What do you see? Like, what do you see like filling that gap? Is it Dan hiring a president? Is it Dan partnering with some sort of like venture studio? Like, how do you see that playing out?
I think all of it. I think we look at technology and how so many great engineers were like, oh, I can build this. I made this technological breakthrough, and I just don't know my go-to-market. Am I enterprise? Am I consumer? Am I, what am I? Do I just sell the company to a big tech company? And now we're seeing this next era where it's like, I found a way to really access an audience. I really deliver a lot of value through content. How do I make money off of it?
Yep.
Who am I selling to? And that opportunity and the number of different answers, the same way we've seen so many different answers in tech, I think is the next 10 to 15 years of content businesses. And there will be so many different fits, and that's where you throw up a matrix and you say, are they utility? Are they entertainment? Do they have this audience? Do they have money? Do they not have money? And it's like, great, like that's the workshop. Like what we do with a lot of creators we meet anyway is we'll just workshop their situation. It's like a situation report. And it's like, hey, like what are your competencies? Who is your audience? Who's got the money? How much money have you made? And you go through a series of these questions, and it hopefully gives them a better sense of, oh, okay, this is where because creator is such a broad word.
Yeah,
But if
totally.
you go through that exercise, 1 or 2 sessions, you go, oh, okay, I have a slightly better sense of who I am from a business perspective.
Yeah. Super interesting. So we're almost at time, and I just want to leave a few minutes to answer the question, or have you answer the question. What would be one piece of advice for an up-and-coming creator who doesn't want to just be pure kind of talent and entertainment, but wants to build kind of an enduring business around themselves?
My first piece of advice is build a team. And whether that's a co-host, whether that's an editor that works for you, whether it's an operator, it's really hard to do things by yourself. And while it's really tough to scale your time in front of the camera, because you can't just swap faces, it really is important to start getting people that are committed to you and your business. And so I do think that there's an awesome cohort of agents and managers and service providers and everything, but finding people that, similar to if you're building a startup, that really want to wake up in the morning and prioritize your mission and your idea first, the sooner you can get to that moment, the faster you'll go, the more fun it will be with other people. And so building a team, I think, is the top priority, no matter what type of creator, what type of business you are.
Love it. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
First episode.
How we do?
I have no idea.
No, it's really good.